Hi, James here, also known as the Fitness and Mind Coach, and welcome to the very first episode of the Unapologetically Neurodivergent podcast. Quick heads up before we dive in, this podcast is unfiltered with occasional swearing, and I will be talking about masking, mental health, and my past suicide attempts. So if that's not something you're in the right headspace for today, maybe give it a listen later when you're good to go. Right, let's talk about neurodivergence. So, for those who know me, I wear a few hats, both figuratively and literally. I run a coaching business helping neurodivergent people navigate health and well-being without being sucked into all the usual toxic fitness bollocks. And when I'm not doing that, I work full-time for the NHS and the county government, mostly staring at health data, trying to figure out what systems are broken, and more than on occasion, I'm often swearing at spreadsheets. Some people think I'm just a PT when they hear me talk about food and fitness, but in reality, I help people find a way to feel good living with a neurodivergent brain, especially in a world that wishes you would just pretend you're not. As for my own journey with my spicy brain, well, that's a bit of a slow burner. Because growing up, I just thought I was a moody, grumpy teenager with a gaming addiction and a very good talent for avoiding human contact. Nobody ever mentioned the words ADHD or autism. In fact, I'm pretty sure nobody really knew a lot about them when I was a kid. They would just tend to focus on the negatives, like talking to that one mate that you have a shared interest in, so they label you talkative, or the struggles with learning, that lack of dopamine, so you shut off and then get labeled as lazy or underperforming. It wasn't until I was 27 that someone even casually dropped in, you're probably a bit different. Which honestly hit me like a lightning bolt because for the first time, I wasn't just weird or antisocial. Well, I mean, I was, but it hit differently. Especially since it was like nearly 10 years after my suicide attempt, and at that point, no real explanation as to why it happened in the first place. And even then, after all that, I was still dragging myself through life, seeking dopamine and self-guidance to get me through, which had worked up to a point. So then I spent the next decade rebuilding my life. No diagnosis, just grabbing onto whatever label fitted me best and trying to make it work. But weirdly, it actually did. Because I was open about what I was struggling with, things like social anxiety, for example, I acknowledged it and I worked with it. Things actually got better. My relationship with my wife, Rachel, started to strengthen because I finally understood what I needed. That gave me a clear enough headspace to then work out what she needed from me. Initially, I didn't even want a diagnosis. I was fine. I could function and I had learned to adapt. I ended up wanting it more for my son, to make things easier for him, because every time we met someone, the first thing they would ask is it in the family? Is there a diagnosis? So I thought I'd grab a diagnosis and then hopefully he will have an easier ride with it. Maybe even support that I'd never had. Hoping it would smooth out a few potholes, not all, but some. So then I went to my GP and I asked about the right to choose, and I picked my provider that was referred to me from someone I knew. Then, funny enough, even though I only asked for an autism assessment because that's what I was sure I had, they basically turned around and said, no, mate, you need both. So I got my official ADHD diagnosis around about April this year, and last weekend I got confirmation that I was on the autism spectrum. But the thing is, I kind of already knew. And by now I've learned to be unapologetically me way before the diagnosis, because before accepting me for me, I did struggle. I used to make up excuses to get out of things like social stuff as soon as the panic, dread, and overstimulation kicked up. But once I started saying it out loud, look, I'm an introvert. I get overwhelmed. I need low pressure environments. People around me actually accepted it and adjusted their expectations. Now suddenly it was fine for me to dip in and out of events or not even turn up at all. And finally I could do that all guilt-free too. So now I speak up, I ask for clarity, I definitely don't force myself into every small talk ritual. I keep my friend circle small, and I'm not even sorry about that either. And thinking back, being allowed to just be me when I was younger gave me a huge advantage. And I appreciate not a lot of people get that. I never felt like I had to be the loudest or the most social or even the most present. I just got to be weird, and I owned it too. Now, don't get me wrong, the spicy brain of mine still throws in a few curveballs when the guard is down. For instance, I plan things to the T, then forgotten a pen and the whole shopping list goes to shit. That one missed item and my ADHD brain just torches the operation and goes rogue. I once got so anxious proposing to Rachel that I made myself ill for days afterwards, and don't even get me started on Tesco's. I almost walked out there once because they moved the bloody barbecue coals. Trolley full of food, and I was about to rage quit before noticing the coals down a different aisle. But there are times I enjoy being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world, like the time when someone would vaguely describe a film and couldn't remember the title, so I would ask one totally weird, seemingly unrelated question and then give them the exact title they were looking for in the first place, like some sort of film buff Sherlock Holmes. I love how confused and entertained people get when I do things like this, but also I recognise it's just pattern recognition. It's not a superpower, but it can be as cool as hell. So, if I can give one little bit of advice today, if you're listening to this and you're still masking, I get it. It's safer, it's easier, but it burns you out. And you don't have to be loud about being neurodivergent. You don't need to slap it on a t-shirt either. But let yourself be you. Start dropping the mask with people you trust. Start saying no when things don't work for your brain. All right, try it diplomatically. There's no need to get out of the soapbox every time, but don't shrink just to make people comfortable either. If I'd known and understood me earlier, if the world had been a bit more clued up, maybe I wouldn't have hit that dark point at 18. I didn't try to take my life because I was neurodivergent. I did it because my brain was flooded with pain and rejection that I just didn't understand. And at that point, I thought it was never going to stop. But you know what? It did. And my life is 1,000,000 times better than ever it was before. And what's even better is I now get to help others avoid that same cliff edge. So guys, that's me. That's my story, or at least a part of it, and that's why this podcast exists. So, if you're into messy honesty, zero masking, and figuring out how to live a full life with a neurospicy brain, stick around. You can find me over on Instagram and TikTok at the Fits in Mind Coach. And if you're ready to be unapologetically neurodivergent, come join the community and let's have some fun in a quiet corner of the internet where it's always safe to just be us. Cheers for listening and tune in next time.